make a process that the person going on their website to view their website and its content has to prove their age.
In another ruling, the court upheld a provision of the Affordable Care Act that says the structure of the government's Preventive Services Task Force is constitutional, allowing it to continue working. This means that about 150 million people will continue getting free preventive services. In yet another 6-3 decision, the justices ruled that an FCC program that provides telephone and internet services to rural communities and low-income Americans can continue. The Supreme Court said Congress's delegation to the FCC for the program didn't violate the Constitution. David Lamb, NTD News.
Essentially limits federal judges' ability to block executive actions nationwide. That's at least in the short term while judges review their legality. First, what are the larger implications here? Which Trump-related nationwide injunctions could we see rolled back as a result of this?
Well, there have been a number of nationwide injunctions, I think 40 in all, covering everything from immigration to how the government operates to handing out grants, all these sort of things, suspending payments. So there's been a lot of them which are now called into question. I think this is extremely important for the Trump administration because much like the first Trump administration, these sort of nationwide injunctions have stymied their agenda because the opponents only need to win once. They need to win every single time. So this potentially is extremely important for Donald Trump moving his agenda forward.
Now, lawfully, the answer is not for the court to exceed its power to. Break that down for us, especially in the broader context of the separation of powers. Where do the courts and the president stand in relation to each other?
Yeah, well, that's an important concept, which is that federal courts are limited jurisdiction. They're given jurisdiction by the Congress, and they can only extend that jurisdiction to the extent they've been given it. They are not all powerful, despite the way some judges act. They are actually not all powerful. They have to stay within their lane. And what the court was saying in this time, that lane does not extend to these universal injunctions. It's not a power that has been given to the federal courts by the Congress. And when I talk about limited power of the federal courts, we're talking about the lower federal courts, not the Supreme Court, because the lower courts are a creation of the Congress. The Supreme Court is created by the Constitution, so it has much broader power than the lower federal courts have.
And William, the justices said that even without nationwide injunctions, plaintiffs can use class action lawsuits for a broader injunction. Walk us through that process.
This came up during the oral argument in the case, and I think what you're going to see is various federal court judges and litigants trying to make an end run around this ruling by framing the relief they're seeking not as a universal injunction, but as class action relief, class action applying to a much broader group of people. And there are standards that have to be proven to get class status and to implement class relief. So I think that's what we're going to see. So this may have solved one problem.
He was visiting. The Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, a global group of lawmakers from over 30 countries, called the planned plot, if successful, an act of state terrorism. China's foreign ministry denies any wrongdoing and instead blames what it calls Taiwan independence forces. It's a term Beijing often uses for Taiwan's president and vice president, both democratically elected. At the same time, China is stepping up its messaging and military posture. This week, top Chinese diplomat Wang Yi told EU ambassadors that Beijing is determined to take Taiwan, despite growing global concern. And in the Western Pacific, China deployed both its aircraft carriers, the Liaoning and Shandong, simultaneously. Both ships moved past the first island chain and into the second island chain, marking a major show of force. Faced with high prices, many Americans are turning to the gray market for obesity medicines, buying cheap ingredients they believe come from China. Here's more.
And I inject that, and I'm done.
This is a do-it-yourself obesity medicine that Amy Spencer is mixing. Each week, the mother of two injects herself with weight loss drugs, 2 of which are in clinical trials and not yet approved for sale by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Spencer is not part of any drug trial. but mixes the cocktails herself using minute doses that she believes are safe. The total cost comes to about $50 monthly, as little as 1/10 of what she would expect to pay their makers for full treatment.
I found there are several peptide message boards on Reddit, and I started looking at those, and that's where I found the gray market. And when I got on there and saw the price difference, it was pretty crazy.
Sleeper cell. Generally speaking, they aren't really these, low key. They don't do anything until they get the phone call one day. It's not really how it
There
works.
was the awkward thing where the guy was arrested for trying to hire an Eastern European mafia to carry out an assassination in New York.
Okay, so this
That
is
was
the
a big
point.
one.
But
Yeah.
also,
But I don't think it was illegal though.
but the assassination attempts against Trump, the guy on they're going through proxies. They were trying to hire, Mexican cartels or other people to go through. So they're not doing it themselves. So what is the implication of that? Does it mean they don't have very strong enough presence here to carry it out themselves? That
They don't
it's coming
want
from
the
an end,
heat.
or they don't want
the heat.
they want
to
to
do it.
exactly, put some buffer. But anyway, it's a question to be asked. But the real, if they're not real sleeper cells, let's say the command and control isn't even there right now to activate them. Of course, the other concern is that people want to globalize, the Intifada and just become jihadists. If there's a fatwa, which is, a religious ruling that comes out of Iran and says, globalize it, everyone should seek revenge for the U.S. bombings, then who knows what could happen? All you need is a car driving into a crowd.
In New York City turned to election campaign around globalizing the Intifada. Maybe something
like that.
Yeah, that'd be
I
interesting.
mean, Mamdani has said that in the past.
Oh, okay. I wasn't going to say it directly, but
Well, so you're saying, they don't have the resources or et cetera.
Potentially.
I mean, okay,
You don't know.
half are in detention. You don't need half. You need 10 guys.
Correct,
You need 10 guys, and then we don't know, then they do something, and then, then we dig into it, and it's like, actually, in Montana, they set up this whole training facility, and they set up a realistic version of this, this schoolhouse, and they've been training for a month,
So DHS put out, the ones that they know of where they are, they're obviously monitoring and trying to arrest them, this kind of thing. DHS put out a warning the other day saying to expect higher risk of some minor cyber attacks, but also general, that there might be these working alone, self-initiative.
It might be a minor risk of severe.
It's a minor, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
What do they say? Low-level cyber attacks. I don't know why, but there might also be extremists who are mobilizing independently. Watch out for those too.
It's probably so incredibly difficult also to vet these people, because we know the Iranian regime is not a wonderful place to grow up in and live.
Correct.
And there's probably a lot of Persian people who are trying to flee that, and God forbid if these people who are all apprehended and put in detention, and then they're going to be sent back, we're kind of sending them to their
That's okay. We
demise.
can send it to third countries.
Of course, it's South Sudan.
South Sudan.
Well, there's also the
Speaking
issue
of
too.
it.
It's not like black and white. Like just because they're not part of the regime doesn't mean they're also not part of a terror group. Also, like
It also doesn't
there's
mean that they're bad
a lot of different groups. Well, a lot of the ones that fled the regime too prior to like the '79 revolution. A lot of them really
are
don't
very
like the regime.
patriotic Americans.
Well, of
too.
course, but those are that was a different class people. The question is, when we saw all the young fighting age single men coming across the border from lots of different countries, red flags go up. It's not the same as a family.
When I was in
seeking
Panama at the
better
migrant
life.
camps, I ran into some of the Iranians, and I remember a couple guys. They were like big buff dudes, dressed military looking. I mean, well groomed, looked very wealthy, and they looked like military. They looked full on like military.
Trust me,
Well,
bro.
Yes. No, I was there.
And I mean, as Roman said, there's 1,500 in the country. You don't need more than a couple to wreak havoc. So the point is, we don't know what the actual threat level is, but higher alert.
I mean, we just need to be a serious country. You vet people who come in. And, okay, Tiffany, how do you feel about your tax dollars being used like that? They come in, they have them right there. Hey, Iranians, we have you. And then they let them go. And then your tax dollars then have to chase them down, figure out where they are, capture them, and then set them aside. And then
$17,000 each.
For what?
For deportation.
Right, and that's the act of deportation.
That's what you saw with the last administration too. A lot of people who worked in customs and border or ICE, they were feeling very depressed because that's what They were paid by the taxpayers to do their job, and they couldn't do it. And they're getting very demoralized. Like, they have these people, a lot of them, like, sure, you have the families coming in genuinely seeking asylum, but you have all of these other ones where they're coming in illegally. They're like, if you come in illegally, you're an illegal. It doesn't matter how dire your situation is, go through the right routes. And because they were flooding the system, those people who were coming in legally and were waiting for their asylum claims are just being pushed back years and years and years. And then the people trying to protect this country, they're like, they're feeling extremely demoralized. So you had a lot of people retiring early. Some, you know, even committed suicide. They were like, I'm trying to protect this country and I can't. So you have that level within the people who are working themselves, and then obviously you have the taxpayer who are like, what is my money doing?
You know, we should remind ourselves what's going on at the southern border, which is still in near shutdown. It's like 90. I think there was some very low number, like 30 people, 30 gotaways last month, compared to 1,800.
When I was in California, I went down there with one of the a Border Patrol agent who, you know, he leads one of the unions. He brought me and my producer into the middle area between the two fences, and we were talking about like the situation. He said in that one sector went from about 1,000 people a day just crossing to like maybe 60, 70, and they catch all of them.
It's remarkable. Like, and that's not, you know, things. It leads, you know, if it's all calm and isn't news, it's just not even being talked about anymore because it is a non-issue. It's 98% down.
All right. Speaking of Iran, oh man, such a big Iran segment. But you know what? Honestly, when you have a looming war with Iran, I think you gotta have that discussion. Come back after the break, and Tiffany will give us more Iran updates, including U.S. military scrambling for ways to protect our bases from drone warfare. Come back after the break and we'll discuss that.
You got 30 minutes. So maybe